Hello, everyone. Uh, Jamen here. The topic is the conversation, and this is one of what I mentioned of the set of big, globally transformational things that is missing, sorely missing, and urgently needed here on planet Earth. In fact, I would like to make an invitation to everyone who basically gets it to join me, to join us in the conversation at the Collective Intelligence Block Party and at the Solution Club, both of which you can find out information and links on radish.org. So please check it out. So what is the conversation? The conversation is fundamentally a conversation about that seeks to answer the question, how do we, humanity as a whole, how do we come together to save life on Earth? Okay. Now, I see that conversation as having three major pillars, right? One is, what is our goal, or what are our goals specifically? And what I'm really talking about is an end state. What is the end state we want to get to? Our goal is to get here. We are here, our goal is to get here. And that here, that end state, is a hyper object. I make the analogy, it's like if I want to get to a specific address in New York City, and I'm way over here on the West Coast, I don't need to know the specific address I'm going to until I'm actually within, 30, 40 miles of New York City, because then that'll dictate whether I go on this route or that route or whatever. But until I'm 98% of the way there, I don't need to know that last bit of information. Likewise, I don't think we have to have the goal too, hyper defined, if you will, until later. But we can start out with kind of a general goal, and rather than leave that hanging, I'll just articulate my vision of the goal, where we want to get to. But first, let me point out the other two big pillars of the conversation, right? So we got the goal. The next is the strategy. How are we going to get there, right? Okay, real simple. Goal, strategy to get there. And the third is, okay, strategy, pie in the sky, that's great. What are we focused on right now? What are the immediate next steps? And I focus on the three next steps, 1, 2, 3. So just really briefly, the immediate next step for me is to get all of this communication that is in this series that this video is a part of on my YouTube channel, to get all of this communication as tight as possible. And then my next two steps after that, 2 and 3, both relate to the topic of the Brooklyn singularity, which I talk about more in its own video. And the topic of strategy is something I cover in its own separate video called Uber strategy, not like the taxi, but like really big Uber strategy. And so right now I'll just focus on the third pillar, which is the first, that of the goal. So what is the goal? So I'm just starting to articulate it. Remember, I said, like, it doesn't have to be totally precise. And so I started off by saying that my big goal is that all of humanity eat nutritious, whole food, plant-based diets that are immune boosting and have plenty to eat, and have the rest of their basic needs met, like shelter and healthcare, etc. As well as, some higher needs like access to the arts, to recreation, to nature, meditation, all kinds of great resources that are, um, you know, basic and beyond, I would say. Sounds like Bed Bath and Beyond, but anyway, and that we find deep meaning and purpose in caring. That we become what um, Silas, Dr. Silas Rao mentions as Homo ahimsa, kind of I just think of it as a caring species, a very united and very caring species, um, caring for each other and caring for Mother Earth. And that caring is the source of our joy and fulfillment and peace. And by the way, I'm just kind of articulating in my own terms. A lot of this was inspired by Dr. Silas Rao, by Shelley, with the goodness, I'm blanking it because they have different. Anyway, Shelley Ostroff, Shelley and Jan, and all their good stuff. Um, but basically that the game of life then becomes, number one, caring, but number two, finding and creating the balance between what is fundamentally our caring work. So when we're caring for our elders or caring for children or feeding those in need or whatever, when we're doing this, that's what I call caring work. It's real physical work, not necessarily physically strenuous, but it could be more mental, it could be spiritual, but it is real work. It's caring work. And then the balance between that caring work and creative work in whatever realms there are outside of the caring work. This is really kind of a tricky one because I have to acknowledge, and I invite everyone to acknowledge, that so much of what we've learned that we want, right, is stuff that was taught to us. It's learned, right? It's socialized in us. In many cases, beaten into us. The urgency of accumulating. And if you don't accumulate, you're going to die and no one's going to want to marry you. And, you're just going to die alone, homeless on the streets, suffering, miserable, humiliated. No. So, we're taught that if we want to make it, we have to accumulate at the level of the individual. So it's a very specific game that we've been taught. And it turns out that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the single biggest engine of planetary destruction of many. But I think that's the biggest, in my humble opinion. But that's neither here nor there. The main point is that, well, there's a lot of points, but one is that so many of the things that we think we want, like, oh, I want lots of land and big houses. This is stuff that we were taught to want, right? I don't think any of that is really natural or innate in us. It'll be a really interesting, part of the game is finding this balance between, the caring work, which is essential. And then, all right, with all of our other free time, like, what do we do? What do we focus on? Hobbies, entertainment, arts, travel, hoarding. Ooh, probably better stay away from that. But I'm just saying, let's see. Let's have the conversation and find out. And anyway, what I'm really just trying to do is kick something off here by giving some of my ideas. I'm not trying to win the Nobel Peace Prize and saying, oh, what a great vision Jamen has, or, I'm just kicking off the topic, partly to give a taste, but a very important taste. And again, we'll cover the other parts in strategy and the Brooklyn Singularity and other places. But we've got to have the conversation. Let's have the conversation. What is the goal? What is the world we want? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. What it might look like, what life might look like in that world. Where are we living? What are we doing? What's the game? What's the culture? What's the cultural story? Are we on video conferences with each other? Are we meeting in person? You know, all kinds of good stuff. So, and I just want to give a nod to my colleague Michael Gosney, the Sierra Club dinner I put together, where he was our main guest speaker on arcologies, and the great after dinner discussion we had afterwards. We talk about a lot of these things at that Sierra Club dinner. And oh shoot, that was a while back. That was like January 2019 or something like that. Anyway, let's have the conversation. This is an urgent missing. And so again, my call to action is, if you get it, that we need to have this conversation, then join me and others at the block party and at the Solution Club in talking and having the conversation. What do we want to achieve? What's our strategy to get there? How do we start? All right, so please join us. Thanks so much. See you soon.